G'day, mate. Welcome to episode number 6 of the Clever Dummies podcast. I am Lockie, joined by Anik. How are you going tonight, my friend?
Great. I'm going great, bud.
Yeah, that's the
It's
way.
episode 6.
Oh, mate, we are pumping these out like we're bloody making iPhones overseas, mate. We're just churning through these like we're made of it, brother. It's fucking awesome.
It's great. It's brilliant. It's brilliant. And there's been some good response coming through as well. People have been just sort of giving us a nice shout out, saying it was, it's a good job done, well done, as well as, appreciation for certain items that we talked about as well.
Yeah, no, that's always good. We know we're doing it for ourselves, and we know there's a few people listening, but yeah, people are digging it. So no, it makes us feel good and sort of gives us a bit more fuel to keep going and pumping it out. So yeah, bloody happy days.
Love it. For the people who have been tuning in to our podcast or listening to it on Spotify, that I can't get that tune it out of my head. Have been tuning in. Well, for people who have been listening, there's a page up on our website which is homework. So if you want to do your homework, and that's where we're going to post all the links. That's all up and live, so you can check it out. There's a few items up there.
Yeah, we've got a couple of things referenced to each sort of episode we talked about, maybe a few things that people might not be familiar with, or a couple of books and that. We hit a few good ones last week, so yeah, no, that looks awesome, mate. And as I said before, but no, the website looks bloody great. So yeah, very proud of yourself, mate. Pat yourself on the
Jeez.
back, young friend.
All right. How's your day? What did you
Yeah.
get up to?
Nah, not too much, mate. He had a full weekend off, which is good. First time in a while that I've had the weekend off. So we got a house inspection tomorrow. The bloody joys and benefits of renting. So just got the house ready for that. Sort of the cleaning that you put off a little bit. Got most of that done, and then sort of had a maid over, and we watched the UFC today. As you know, I love that shit so much. So it was really good, and just Conor McGregor. He's nothing quite like it, the atmosphere and the energy that he brings. So, yeah, it was a bloody great day. And, yeah, always a good day when I watch the UFC, but even better when he's on for sure. It's just fucking special.
How good was the fight?
Oh, mate, yeah, it was unbelievable. And the build-up to it was interesting because it'd been a while since he competed. It was October 2018, and before that he hadn't fought MMA 2 years before that. So he's been inactive and didn't really know what he was going to come out with, how he was going to come out. But the man just delivers. He knows how to handle the pressure. He looked a little bit nervous. He looked like it had been a while for him, but he came out and he looked so big. And he was fighting at welterweight, which is 170 pounds. For us, that's about
77 kilos?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So a little bit bigger than what he's used to. So people were wondering if his power was going to transfer over, how, maybe his conditioning might drop off. How is that all going to work? And, none of that shit came into play because he just came out like a bloody dog on heat, for lack, I don't know if that's a saying or not, and just blasted fucking Cerrone, a couple of shoulder shots and put him on the back foot, smacked him in the face with his foot, and it was sort of key from there. It was just about the referee jumping in and giving Cerrone a chance to kind of fight back. But no, that was absolutely as dominant as he pretty much can be. Yeah, it was pretty special.
It was brilliant. 22nd, was it?
20
The fight
seconds.
last
No, it
20
was 40
seconds.
seconds. Yeah, 48 seconds or
Oh,
something
40
like that.
seconds. 48 seconds.
Yeah, it
It's
didn't feel like
brilliant.
very much, so that's for sure.
It was a good fight. I seen the highlights. I didn't actually see the fight itself. I was out shopping, but yeah, I saw the highlights. It was a brilliant fight.
Yeah.
Those shoulders really laid into him. Unusual move on his hand. You don't see that very often, but it was brilliant.
Yeah,
Nonetheless,
no,
it did the
we've
job.
never seen it really impact a fight that significantly. It's something that they'll use to maybe disrupt timing in the clinch when they start to grapple. And he's a guy that doesn't necessarily want to grapple, but he was venomous with it. Like he was like, just get the fuck off me. What are you trying to clinch up? And he sort of came out at the start of the fight and then he overshot a left hand, so he sort of set himself up for the clinch. And yeah, we've never seen like shoulder barge to the face like be so impactful. But that's kind of the beautiful thing about MMA. It's not boxing, it's not kickboxing. You can use basically the entire part of your body to inflict damage. And yeah, it's pretty powerful. He sort of dropped down a bit and he threw it up like an uppercut almost, but with his shoulder. And it's fucking, yeah, it was
Good.
great. That's highlight
It's
of the
good.
highlight reels.
How do you block a shoulder hit?
Oh, you just run away. You just push it
You
away,
just run away. That's
or
it.
you
You
sort
push
of,
away.
yeah, you throw that overhook over. So
Oh.
you throw your hand over the top of his to try to change it. But no, that was, yeah, you've got to get out of there. And by the time Cerrone realized it was banging him, like he was like, shit, he's actually trying to hurt me with this. By the time he realized that, his nose was broken. So yeah, it was very fast. He's a powerful lad, and no, it's just so happy to have him back for sure.
He's brilliant. He's brilliant. He's one for the history books for sure, as he says.
Yeah, that's
You know,
right.
it's he's and his plug for his alcohol company, whiskey.
Yeah,
What a
proper
brilliant
12
man!
whiskey. Yeah, no, he's a brilliant
Proper
marketer
12.
too. That's what
He's
makes
a
him
brilliant.
so
You
great.
know, look, it's so funny because he comes out and unlike anyone else, where people taking it seriously and sort of be lightheaded and just trying to get out of the zone. He's just like, this is my opportunity. I'm just gonna plug it.
Yeah,
It's
hundred
brilliant.
percent. Gave his mum a shout out, all that usual stuff. But yeah, 100%. And he's usually a lot more aggressive with his call outs. And he called everyone he called them bloody fools. Usually he goes a bit harder, but no, he's matured a little bit. He's not as reckless as he was before. But yeah, he's made a shitload of money. I think he made about $60 million off his first year of proper 12 whiskey. And have you tried it before?
No, is it good?
Yeah, it's not too bad. It's pretty smooth, pretty sweet. So it's an easy drinker one. It came over here. I think I first tried it in March or something like that. It was about $65. It's probably like a $45 bottle. It's not quite worth the 60 odd dollars, but yeah, it's well worth a go. And you can drink it on the rocks. Got a little bit of it's got like a vanilla tinge or an oak tinge to it. So yeah, it's actually not too bad. So yeah, if
Well,
you're out and about, give it a go. I think you'll like it.
well, there you go. Well, there you go, Connor. That's your shout out. Proper 12 whiskey. Give it a go.
Yeah, that's right. Hopefully that's our first sponsor, eh, mate? How good will that
Well,
be?
that's it. If you have Conor McGregor sponsoring you, what else could you want? I
That's
mean, I
right.
was I was going for that Apple sponsorship, but I
Yeah,
guess that's a topic for another podcast, I suppose. Or
as they say, you got to shoot your shot. And it was pretty cool to have his own company sponsoring the cage when he was fighting. Like you've never seen that before, but he's actually in the
that's it.
ring and he's got his company plastered over there. So that's pretty epic. He's a real groundbreaker. So yeah, bloody good on
Oh,
you,
for
Connor,
sure.
mate. Two
He's
thumbs up
just an
on that, eh?
overall unusual person, and he doesn't really do things very how things are done contemporarily.
Yeah,
Contemporarily.
exactly. That's a big
So
part of his
he
success. Eh? He's
does
so
things different.
unique.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, which that last part brings us to our
Yeah,
today's
it's a great
topic.
segue, mate.
It was a great segue. Today we're talking about being different or being authentic as to being yourself and how to carry out your life and how to do certain things and how to achieve greatness and how to achieve success and all those things that we desire. But very often we get told that there's only one way to do certain things, and and we often buy those things. We say, yeah, all right, well, I guess there's only one way to do thing. I mean, Kona is a great example of as to how different he is from anyone else who fights in the UFC or any other athlete. um, not any of the things that he does hasn't been done before. A lot of them. I mean, even his fighting style. So he's a great example, and you can see his success. And people end up liking those people a lot who are just different.
Yeah, most definitely. I think Floyd Mayweather in boxing kind of had a similar approach where he sort of took the business aspect of it onto himself. And traditionally, in sport, you're under an umbrella of an organization or a promotion or a sponsorship. So you usually sort of toe the political line, just like in the business world, you sort of represent your company. But it's those sort of people and that sort of attitude that, obviously he's got an infectious personality and you enjoy hearing him talk. He doesn't sound, like he's rubbing sticks together, but he's just so uniquely himself and he has such a positive and he's like his goals are so big that he's just constantly chasing it. And it sounds crazy at first and a lot of it was crazy, but when these things started coming true, it's like, wow, this guy's not just the talk. He doesn't just talk the talk. He backs it up too.
Oh, for sure, that's it. And I think that's what it's all about as well. Because if you talk about something and talk about doing something different, you have to back it up as well. But now let's. I'm gonna start by looking into as we always do, exploring this a little bit. Doing things different and not following the crowd, because And we spoke about this in our some of our previous episodes as well. We are living in a society where it's very much appropriate to follow the crowd, and at times the only thing that people end up doing is following the crowd, whether it's careers, whether it's social stands, or whether your political stand, and all those things where you have the opportunity to make a decision. People end up following what everyone else is doing.
Mm.
And that particular mindset flows into many things, and you can see it. I mean, there's search results for it. And I worked a little bit in I worked in well, not a little bit, I worked quite comprehensively in sort of, I suppose, entertainment, right? So in entertainment, we have a saying that one of the best thing that can happen to a show is for it to be sell out, for it to be a
Yep.
sellout show. Now, which is interesting because sometimes the show doesn't even have to be sold out. You just have to say that that you're not selling any more tickets. You'd be surprised how quickly people want to buy tickets. So there's that theory, and I mean, I suppose the scarcity mindset sort of comes into that place as well, because we often crave things that are in short demand. But apart from that, it is a fact that people are really, really thinking. The way their thinking works is, well, everyone else is seeing it, must be good, so I need to watch it. I need to go see it. There's another example of something that really triggers me personally is film reviewers, right? And
Yeah.
I have
Critics. Oh.
critics. Oh, they really get my blood boiling. The reason I bring them up particularly is because I've had friends and who would say would not go watch a movie because some critics said that's not a good movie.
Yep. Yep.
It's just that or wouldn't even just watch it online. Yeah, and let's not watch that movie. But I want to watch that movie. Well, no, it's shit because that person said it's shit. Not making your own mind up. I mean, the thing about critics is, and this is really interesting because, and I had this conversation with someone before who was sort of specialized in human behavior, and we had this chat. I said, "Why does this happen?" So what we sort of came to a conclusion was, if you really think about of what critics are doing, right? It's sort of their job to critique, or to find the negatives in a particular movie or something. Um, Otherwise, if they don't, they just look like chumps.
Yep. Yep.
Imagine critic going to a movie and saying that movie was incredible.
Yeah. Wouldn't have a job. Wouldn't have a
No,
job.
wouldn't have a job.
Yeah.
So, which is really interesting, and so that just shows that sometimes we're just letting other people make our minds up for us, and not really exploring our options. Now, the big one comes to as to how we start our lives. So when we finish school, a general life would of a person, if you were to look at majority, right, of people, their lives would go something like this. Um, they're born, they grow up, parents love them. Slowly, they end up going to preschool. Their teachers love them. They're pretty cute. They end up going to primary school. Primary school is a pretty decent time for them. They're growing up. They're exploring. They're learning about life. Then they end up going to high school. Some of them end up building some good social skills. Some of them not as much, but their parents still love them. They're learning a lot of things, and exploring their option as to who they are going to become. Now, as soon as the school life finishes, for some reason the learning stops there as well. Some people end up going to university, and it's often not because that's what they want to do, but it's only because that seems like a reasonable option because everyone else does it. And if you try to get out of that sort of thing, your parents, your friends, and your teachers, everyone will tell you, what are you doing? That's what you should be doing. You should go to university because going to university is the only thing you should be doing. Now I'm not saying university is bad. You shouldn't go to university. In fact, you should, but if that's what you want to do, right? So often people will finish university, get a job, get a if people, so there will be two segues again. Some people will end up going to a trade or some other sort of scenarios, but there's only few, just a handful of options that people end up doing because those are the paths that being the most traveled and they seem safe.
Yeah,
And
and that
then
kind of
yes,
educational system creates that kind of that function that you just spoke about of doing what other people are doing. Like your design, your the way you learn is structured in a way that it's kind of preparing you for the job force in a way that's good, obviously, because you're preparing for what you're studying for. But it kind of creates a very similar way of thinking, and it breeds a lot of people who are in tune to kind of think a certain way. And a lot of degrees don't kind of promote the idea of critical thinking. It's based off, what are we teaching you, and that's kind of the cold hard facts of it. And I think outside of your kind of your math and your business degrees, I mean, even in business should be so much creativity, but most of these degrees, it's about this is the cold hard truth, and this is what we've always kind of lived by, and then it's kind of like a bleed on effect, and heaps of people are doing it, so it just builds and creates a society of people kind of thinking the same way about it.
absolutely. And often in your university degrees, you don't really, what you said, Lachlan, is absolutely true. You don't really learn about innovation. You don't learn about how to create something new. You learn about how something is done and how it's always been done.
Yep, yep.
Right. So that's what happens. And, so people will finish degrees. And to be honest, some of them will probably end up getting very well paying jobs. You can end up becoming a manager at this place. Some people will go into med, they end up becoming a doctor. And, they finish their degrees, they get a job, they have kids. Those are a little, the timelines vary, but, it's sort of the same story. They live their life, they end up buying, probably end up getting a mortgage, getting a house, they have kids, and the scenario repeats for their kids. And they'll probably live a decent life by their regards, or what society told them what the life was that they should live. And they live technically quite happily. They take a holiday once every year or twice every year, depending on what their job ends up being. And they live the rest of their days out, just sort of going to the job and doing all that stuff. And one day it all comes to an end, and then they're gone. So
Vicious cycle of life. That sounds like
the cycle of
many
life,
people trapped in there.
for sure. And this is now the question is, what's wrong with that, right? So that's the question. The question that I propose here is, why is that the right option?
Proposing that to me, or you sort of just putting that
No, I was
out?
just proposing it, and I was
Okay,
hoping you
yeah,
say something.
yeah. No, no, you're
And
right.
you have a slight pause in there as well.
Yeah, no, it's interesting because on the one hand, it creates like security, and it gives people, gives people direction. It might give them a sense of purpose, but the purpose is very limited to that, that career choice or kind of that lifestyle. And people find it very difficult and very hard to move on from those situations, even if it's a situation where they might, they're very unhappy in, because they spent, 4 years getting a degree, and they've kind of created this life, or even people associate themselves with it. Like, John does this, like John's an accountant, or Bill's old Barry's a butcher. And those things are good. Like, we all need those sort of people, in our day, without those people, like without not run of the mill jobs, but without those sort of 9 to 5 type jobs, like we wouldn't be able to function as a society. But it definitely, I believe that's a large contributing factor to a lot of people's unhappiness in today's society. If they either are too scared, or they're not sure how to go outside of their area of expertise and learn something new. And even though the kind of the essence of why you started studying was to learn something new, you kind of forget that as you kind of grow on, and you've got a lot of things that become dependent on that way of life, and then it's just like a trap. It is that vicious cycle. Like, it's very, that's very kind of cold hearted about it, but that's what a lot of people live their life as, in that vicious cycle.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's a cycle that will get you in there and you will never sort of, there's no escape. You end up getting a job and you start paying bills and the bills just keep piling up. They just keep on increasing, then there's, increase in, as in general, what is that theory called? Uh, when everything goes up each year. Um, Never mind. R.I.P. Fund.
Yeah, can't think
It's,
of the word. Yeah, that's right
it's
there.
Yeah, yeah, that thing. Expenses go up as well. Cost of living goes up, and you just can't get out of the job. And sometimes people have those flares, those little sparks, and those sparks end up getting buried between the bills and the lives and the kids and everything. Now that's a general. I'm not talking about all the people, right? So this is a very old school mentality. But now I'm not going to stop there. I'm just going to keep on sort of drill into this problem a little bit more, and then start looking at the solution and as to effect of it. Another problem, another thing that happens now more in, I'm talking about the times that we are in, our generation particularly, is there's a big movement on that. Our generation is, entrepreneurs. They're really up and coming. They're influencers and they're entrepreneurs. Once again, they're doing what everyone else is doing. They're trying to push. It's the majority always goes, what's wherever the majority is. No one else is like trying to innovate. That's the biggest problem. And even when they are doing the entrepreneurship, and first of all, I would like to say, if you're following on someone's footstep by each step at a time, following each step that's been tracing it, you're not an entrepreneur. You're not an entrepreneur. Entrepreneur is someone who takes risk and find their own path. Now, the reason I talk about paths is because we keep going on the same path that everyone else is taking. No one is exploring. No one else is doing anything. And it's really interesting because I just want to. This is sort of like our little plug, Lachlan, because there's so many people making podcasts now, and we're making podcasts, and you would assume that we're doing the same thing as everyone else. But I just want to actually say something here about how we've done things. We were doing these kind of podcast sort of videos before it was cool, like 100. I
Yeah,
mean, we started doing it in 2010s, 2000, around then, 2011 or maybe 2012. I don't know, so around there, right? So we started doing it early year. Everything was like we were recording videos and we were doing vlogs, but they were, we were never doing them for publicity, but we
yeah.
just
Even I remember that now. Like I'd forgotten about that. Like even pre-radio, we were doing like those little car vlogs and just chatting
yeah, we were
shit
doing
like
car
that.
vlogs.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
So, and we never did those things because we wanted to be like everyone else. In fact, everyone probably thought that we were silly and for doing those kind of things because, they didn't think that was like cool, or, they probably thought it was cringe, but we were doing us, what we did, what we wanted to. Now, what ends up happening is when you people actually choose a path that someone else's people, when you live someone else's life, what ends up happening is you will, it's a simple saying, you will never be, you if you're copying someone, you will never be the best them because they are the best them. If you're copying someone, so let's say if you're copying a guy named Jerry, I bring up Jerry a lot. If you're copying a guy named Jerry and following his footsteps, and as to you want to become exactly like him, whether it's a doctor or whether he's an entrepreneur, whatever he is, right? If you're following his steps, or there's a whole bunch of people like Jerry. Let's say fitness industry is a big one where people all want to become influencers and post pictures of their body and all that stuff.
Yep.
You will never be the best Jerry ever because the best Jerry is Jerry himself. What you can be the best is the best you. So which is where you find your authenticity and do things di- different. And sometimes things may be hard, but I think the best way to go about it is to find your own ground and be authentic. Because if you don't find your why and who you are, your why is the most important thing ever. That's the only thing you should find out. Why? What's your why? whether you want to make a difference in the world or whether you just want to make money. And an interesting thing about money is when you just want to make money, and when your why is money, it's driven by monetary value, you won't do anything. You won't get it. Simple as that. The
Yeah,
reason being, the reason being, it's sort of that similar scenario. It's a scarcity mindset because you're chasing something, and I only want to bring this in quickly is because think think about it think about it like a cat, right? So have you ever, that scarcity meter? So if there was an experiment done with cats. So let's say if you dangle a little string in front of a cat, right? The cat will chase it. Now, if you throw the string in front of the cat wouldn't give a shit, right?
yeah,
So the reason I bring that particular theory in, it's sort of like money, right? Until you keep chasing money like that cat, you will never end up getting that money because you're someone who is constant worry state of money. So you will never end up getting that money because that's who you are, who you worry about money, right? You need to be a different person. You need to find your reason why you're doing it. And then another thing is, and now how are you going to do it? You don't have to do it like how everyone else did. And even in scenarios where you do end up doing that things that have been done before, so whether you end up becoming a doctor, right, or an actor, right? So in acting industry, and I talk a lot about this because I have a lot of actor friends. I have a lot of actor friends. They all sort of go through the same path where what everyone else has done to end up ending end up in Hollywood, right? And I always say to them, I say, "What if there's another way?" And they will always reply to me, "No, this is how it's always been done." And I just look at them and I say, "And so you're telling me there's no other way?" "No, but that's how it's always been done." "Are you sure there's no other way?" "Yep, well, that's how it's only always been done." So that's always the response. And and what I sort of suggested, and there are people out there who have alternative methods. Like you look at Dwayne Johnson, The Rock. He was an actor. He sort of came through. He built a sort of a fame. He built a name for himself, and he ended up going into movies. And he is now the biggest star on the planet.
yeah,
It's a
exactly.
great example. He didn't
Yeah,
take the he didn't take the road that everyone else did. He didn't go to drama school. He didn't go to he didn't go to drama school. He didn't feature in indie films. He didn't do any of that. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with those things, but you don't have to do things because they've always been done like that. There's million ways to do one thing. Doesn't and there's no one right way or methodology of doing something. It's Yeah, so there's no right method. Sometimes things work for people and sometimes they don't. I want to use an example here, and I heard this example right, and I can't remember where from. It's like imagine you're trying to put a nail in a wall, right? And if you're trying to hammer that in, and you try to hammer that in much as you can, and it just doesn't go in, right? And you what you say is, well, everyone hammers it in and it goes in. But maybe what would you do? You'd just keep doing it. Would you? A lot of people, their mentality is, well, just keep hammering it in until one day it'll go in because that's how everyone else does it. But maybe you can stop there and think about the fact that, well, if I'm hammering that in, is there a possibility there's something behind there? There's a metal piece behind there. Do I need to look at another place to nail this in? Am I holding the nail wrong way around, or should I use a hammer to nail that in? Because I've been hammering it in with my hand. Well, it's just saying, just questioning yourself, or questioning the path.
the Johnson was a really good example of it because he perfected his craft of performance, and even though it wasn't acting specifically, he was obviously very successful, one of the most successful, arguably, pro wrestlers of all time. And that in itself it's an athletic endeavor first and foremost. So it's and then very much so it's about performance too. So it's about building a character, making people believe that character, and going from there. But his original goal was never to be, the biggest actor in the world. It sort of just organically came as he, I'm sure, developed as a person and wanted to try new things. He sort of fell into it, and I guess that's kind of the limitation of, getting a degree or getting a formal sense of education. One, because for a long time you feel you feel like a sense of identity to being being that type of person or having that degree. And we certainly all need like qualifications. We all need things that are going to help us level up. But that's how you get trapped, because then there's no creativity, there's no expansion of that, of that sort of thought process. It's like, okay, I'm going to become this one thing and stick to this one thing. Ironically enough, we were even talking about Jeff Bezos last night, and he's even maybe even a better example. He's, for people that don't know, he's obviously the founder and current big boss of Amazon. The well, pretty much the biggest company in the world, and he's certainly the most wealthiest person in the world. But he started out, doing very well at high school, got into uni, wasn't really sure what he wanted to do, studied electrical engineering, and then went into the financial industry. So he was a stockbroker, and then I think by the age of 30, he was in charge of one of the biggest investment, or a senior vice president or something of one of the biggest investment firms in the world. And then he sort of realized, like, wow, this is like, this is great. And I had more money than I knew what to do with, but I didn't really find happiness. And his why was always, I want to do something bigger. Like, I want to make change. I want to help people. I want to do something that's never been done before. And then eventually that went from, obviously creating Amazon. And I actually got reminded of it. I forgot about it. But for the longest time, Amazon was just like books. It was just like you buy a book, you buy a physical book, and then obviously technology came over and you buy an audio book, and then they sort of branched out onto that. And, we're sort of outside the scope of Amazon a little bit because they haven't quite hit the Australian market yet. They're here, but they're, still a very new concept to a lot of people, and people aren't using it. But overseas, it's just like if you need a plate, you drop a plate, you just go on Amazon, and then it's there the next day. And that's kind of a testimony to his innovation, that he started out doing one thing, he went into something else, like he was leveling up all the time, but he constantly had this thought in the back of his head, like, I need to do something, I need to be something bigger. And we can all do that in our own lives. It doesn't have to be giant steps, but I think if our attitude is about that, then you'll constantly find that, if you want to, like, some people might get lucky, they might find something when they're young that they love to do, and then kind of bringing it back to Hollywood. Like, a lot of actors who make it really big, they sort of go away in a sense because they've sort of done it and they realize, like, wow, I don't actually want to do this as much as I thought, or maybe I did at one stage. But it's the most successful people are the ones that obviously have insane work ethics, and they obviously work really hard, and they're very disciplined and very regimented about what they do. And I guess that's the benefit of tertiary education or a formal education. You kind of get taught those principles, but if you hold on to your why and you remember why you started, pretty much anyone who started because it's for monetary value don't make it, because it just doesn't last. Like, you can actually earn a lot of money, and then you just realize there's no satisfaction in that. So if you hold on to that why, sort of look to innovate in your own life, and that could just be in your own mentality. Keep leveling up, and you'll just keep doing, you'll keep doing and growing things that I believe that'll just help get you towards joy and help make life better. Yeah,
Absolutely. Innovation makes you innovation is progression, and progression, as we said before, progression makes you happy. Progression is happiness. Progression is growth. Progression is life.
yeah. Shrek is love. Shrek is
Shrek.
life.
Let's not talk about that one. That's
Nah,
a
no
whole
way.
other story.
Yeah,
But absolutely. And you're on the mark there. Jeff Bezos is a great example, and he always stayed innovative in a sense where he found another methodology of doing something. I'm sure people doubted him at the time and said, "Well, there's no way you can sell books online." I mean, he started selling everything online. It's just an interesting concept that when people end up doing it, he just said, well, he came up with an idea and made it happen. And another example of it is Steve Jobs. He was another great innovator in a sense where he did what nothing no one ever did before. He came up with, at the time, computers were very not user friendly when he was started working. There's a really nice documentary about as to what he did, but he made documentary friend. He made computers user friendly. Interface was really, the GUI interface was a result of you know Steve Jobs doing it. Steve Jobs really pushing that innovation. Another example of that is, when Steve Jobs himself, so he's probably by far, you would always regard him as one of the most innovative people in the world. I mean, if he was alive today, I wonder what I would have loved to see what he would have done. But he dropped out of college, and but what he did do was he did take up this typography class or choreography class. But that's where he decided that he was going to put nice font in the computers, and that's where the fonts in all modern computers came from. If he never took that class at university, and that's the only class he took because he really dropped out of university, and he took that class, and if he didn't take that class, you know he would have not we would not had any modern, any fancy fonts in our computers. So it just goes to show, how much how important it is to be innovative and to do things differently, right? Now, now there's other examples as well that you can look at, and there's so many people out there who are doing it. But there's just there's just different ways to do things, and if someone tells you that there's only one way to do things and you need to stick to it, you can tell them to fuck off. And to be honest, people will make you feel pretty shitty about finding your own path because it makes them feel uncomfortable. It makes people feel uncomfortable that you know you're finding your own path, which is just completely different. And it's one of those things where people are afraid, almost, that how could someone like how could someone just take a complete new path, because it goes against everything they know. um I want to use another example here. I work in, once again, technology and business, so where we look at how businesses perform and try to better businesses, so increase their operation efficiency. And I find, one of my jobs is to look at processes and how certain things are done. And what I
Yeah,
would go in and look at how people are doing things, and sure enough, people are still doing the old pen and paper and the Excel sheets, and it's like they're living in the 90s, right? And I come in and I say, well, we can replace all that with this thing. And they, sure enough, and the first response I get is, it's always been done like that.
yeah, yep,
Well, that's the response I get. It's always been done like that. What does So what if that's always been done like that? Why wouldn't you not change? Why would you not upgrade, right? You don't It's like, it's like anything in life. You think about the progression of things. Time changes, things change, you have to change your mentality. And if you don't do that, if you stick to that, surely enough, you will be out of the game sooner or later. It's like, let's say if there was a doctor's prescribed you medicine for something 4 years ago, and whenever you get sick, you still keep taking that because that's how you've always taken it. That's not how it works. That's not what you do.
yeah.
You got to upgrade. There's an upgrade, right?
And that's like the
And
same, that's a practical example of what you just said, eh? Like that's the same principle. Like imagine doing something that worked. And I guess that kind of goes back to the loop and the trap of your formal education. Like if you're only taught this one way, then that's kind of the only way you know. But if you've got another way that's more efficient, like be open to it, let it, let it embrace it and learn about it, and you're probably going to make your life easier. That's the beautiful thing about technology. It's all about constant innovation.
for sure, and life is about innovation. And I think the more we
Yeah,
get innovate, and there's a way of doing everything as well. And so many people would, I suppose they're almost afraid. I suppose where you know, um, they don't want to explore what's out there, what other options. And what I said before, which is a pretty big deal as to find your own path. And I'm talking about small things now. I'm talking about things like or let's say you've been working at a job for, let's say, 8 years, and what you do, let's say, you print the orders, right? You print the orders, and then you staple them, and then you write on them saying done if you process the order, and then you've done it. And now someone comes in and tells you all that can be done automatically in a computer system. And I guarantee you know what the first response would be from that person who's been doing it. Well, it's always been done like that. If it ain't broken, why fix it? Well, because there's more efficient way to do it.
Yeah,
you know
it comes that probably comes from a little bit of a fear of job replacement, but then that would just force you to evolve and take on a new position or do something like that. Like you've got to be willing and open, and that's a great example because that happens so common, I'm sure, and I'm so sure there's so many people out there that have worked in a similar atmosphere where there was something that at first it felt very scary and it felt like, wow, this is going to take over, this is going to change the way we do things, maybe the comfortable feeling of the way we do it, but like it's better, like it is more efficient. And the more efficient you are in life, like the better, the more things you can get done, the more time you have to get things done. That's a great analogy.
well, that's it, right? That's it. And there's that's it. You gotta be different, and you be yourself, right? That's it. And there's another there's another area which is completely, so people in regards to, so this is very business. I was talking about their business career, who you end up choosing to become in a person. And now if I talk about in more, at a personal level, right? So people, if you look at attraction, right?
Yeah,
Attraction is a very interesting one, where people will be attracted to people that their peer group and people around them think that are attracted. And they know damn well what that person is attractive. And let's say, I'm talking about, like, let's say person A finds person B attractive, but their peer group is not particularly attracted to that kind of person. That person will end up saying, well, no, I'm not attracted to person B because XYZ, because my peer groups have think they're not attractive. So now that's an interesting one, because now that's at a personal level. And I just want to say how much that influence happens. Because you're listening to what people are saying, and you're letting them influence it. You're not even thinking if there's another way, right? You're not being different. You're not being yourself because you're attracted to that person, but because you have to go with the crowds. If the crowd doesn't think they're not attractive, so you must think they're not attractive, because obviously there must be something wrong with you if you find them attractive. What do you think of that one, Auckland example?
I think you rattled my brain there a little bit. I'm trying to comprehend it. Could it be that people, is there a fear of failure with it? Like it sounds very general, but is that why? Obviously, there's like a sheep esque way of looking at it, where you're sort of following. Maybe you're worried about saying the wrong thing or doing the wrong thing. Do you think that maybe people just continue to follow the same way because it's just a comfortable feeling, like it's familiarity, maybe?
Well, it
It's
just
like a
works.
trap. Eh?
So that's, I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
it works. It works. Why change? Once again, it goes back to the thing what people keep saying to me: why change something that works? That's a whole problem.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
way of
yeah.
thinking, because their friend that they're saying, let's say, friends saying, well, person B, the X kind of people are attractive, the Y kind of people are not attractive. But for some reason you find the Y people attractive, but you're not gonna say, you're not gonna tell your friends and your peers and your family, because because, well, I guess they must be right, so you're gonna go with them because it works for them, so it has to work for you. And I really want to, like, how crazy is that you are attracted to someone, but you question your own inner, you question yourself, because you know, that's what your peers do, or that's what your friends do, and that's what society does. And it's very interesting because if you think about how these things end up being, and attraction is a big one. People are, you know, and I see it all the time, and I see it all the time where people are, you know, um, people are attracted to certain kind of people, and then, you know, you know, you look at a person and see what kind of person they're with, right? And it's almost like you can just predict it, what kind of person they would be with, right?
Yeah,
Based on
yeah,
what they are. And it's really interesting, and I find that really interesting because it's just interesting how it works, because they're sticking to what everyone knows, and you know, they don't want to break any boundaries, and because, you know, they don't want to do anything. And you know, I'll tell you what Lachlan, I'll tell you what the fear is, right? It's the Rosa Parks example. You know, Rosa Parks, who protested, when was it, when, you know, equality between, the black people. And am I allowed to say black people, because technically I'm
of
brown? So
course. Yeah, you just don't
okay.
say the N word, brother. We'll be safe.
I would never say that. Well, you know, but yeah, so, you know, she was standing up for that, and she stood up and she got ridiculed, but eventually it turned into a thing. But the difference was she stood up, so she did her own innovation. That was innovation. You know, we read about those things and we love innovators, yet none of us want to move. And even though we sometimes will sacrifice what we want just to stick to the method that everyone else has done.
Yep,
I
yep.
find that fascinating. I don't think that's a right way to go about things, you know.
No, it's very it's kind of very problematic and very to the way our society has been built, and it it bleed like, and I guess it depends on how you were raised in a sense. Like if you were encouraged with things you did, like if you were or if you socialize in a group where people are looking out for each other and trying to get the best out of each other, then I think more often than not, like you'll help each other to grow, and you're going to continue to grow. And I think that's the beauty of having like a real diverse group of friends, is you can kind of bounce ideas off each other, and you can hear different ideas from different perspectives, and you go into things with a mindset of growth and kind of looking for what, you know, kind of the deeper meaning of things, but like why is this thing done differently? And I guess that's the problem when you have maybe a similar group of friends, or you know, a similar work environment or anything like that. Like you're just not forced to go outside of your comfort zone all the time, so you just don't. Like obviously being uncomfortable is uncomfortable, so it's like it's something that if you're not forced to do, you generally won't. And that, I guess, that idea, or that point you brought up about that similar, you know, that similar way people dress and the similar way people look, like it's that feeling of comfort that's forcing you to be the same. So even though it might feel like it's the right thing to do and it's like the safe thing to do, it you're really just blending in with each other, and you're not actually using, you know, what we all have, a unique personality trait to better situation, or just kind of continue to grow in life. It's so easy to do. Like I'll always find myself slipping in a way I thought, or maybe I might consume a certain type of media for a while, and then eventually I just sort of start thinking in that way alone, and I don't sort of broaden my spectrum. So it's like, as long as I'm thinking like on two ends, like kind of problem solving, is like, why is this the case? And then what can I do to help sort of counteract that? I feel pretty good with it. And I feel I can pick up from a lot of other people when they're closed minded. But if you sort of aren't thinking that way, then it's very easy to kind of get blinded by yourself. And then that kind of rolls on from there. And maybe that's like, I'm kind of guessing a little bit why that happens, but I think the people that I've dealt with that have that similar personality trait, or those examples that you talked about, they're often, very often, they're closed minded. And it might not even be their own fault. It might just be the way they were raised or whatever else, but they all have that in common, and it's just like it's a trap. It really is.
Well, the sad part is that's roughly half of the word, or probably more, if
Yeah,
anything.
that's right. That's right. Yeah, and
And
like
you know,
we're
I think we've got a society of people here who are pretending to be open minded, yet they're pretending to be open-minded as to that. What does open-minded really means? Open-minded means that you're open to possibility of the life, possibilities of life, possibility of the word. That's what it means. But what they're doing is they are real. What they're just saying that they're open-minded, but yet they keep doing the same thing that what everyone else is doing. I mean, you're not really open-minded, then, are you?
Yeah, the opposite for sure.
It's complete opposite. And which is fascinating, because I can, everyone who's told me that they're open-minded, I can get I can, there's few things I can list about, well, not few things, majority of things about them I can say, well, this is what you, this is, there you go, right there, you're following everyone else. It's the sheep mentality, just follow the herd. And it's a disease, I almost want to say, because in society, in life, there's a construct that we live in, and there's so many things that are there, and no one ever questions, right? I mean, there's a website, actually, a really funny website. It says the most useless laws. No one's ever questioned those laws, right? There's other things.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
In society, like, if you don't, religion has certain rules, and you're like, well, what the fuck. Or your parents will put certain rules, your friends will put certain rules in. And oh, it's a thing, like, oh, I'm going to use a great example. I'm going to use an example here. When people say, oh, um, just a small example here, or why do you chew with your mouth open, right? Or like, you have to sit while eating, or you have to have breakfast. So these things that I listed out just quickly, they were random things, like, for example, you have to have breakfast. See, that's really interesting, because, well, everyone just believes it, that we have to have breakfast, and no one really questions, well, should we have it, do we need to? But our teachers told us, well, my mom told me that you should have breakfast, so I'm gonna have breakfast. I guess everyone must be right.
yeah. It
But
was always breakfast is the most important meal
yeah,
of the day. It's what gets your day going.
what gets you do?
Nah, no,
It,
it's not.
it's not. But Lachlan, what's interesting is our bodies were always telling us not to have that breakfast.
Yeah,
No one wants to eat in the morning. So our bodies were telling us not to have breakfast, but we forced ourselves, and everyone has breakfast. It's a thing, because
yeah,
that's what society does. And
yeah. And it
it's
became something you always do, so you do it without always thinking why you do it.
That's right. And it ends up
When
because, yeah,
it's sort of based a little bit off old science, and kind of, I guess, the idea that you need food to help get your day going. When our ancestry was not that. Our ancestry was the opposite. It was like you sort of ate at night, and then you fasted throughout most of the day, and you sort of spent the day doing things so you could eat at night. And yeah, it kind of became, it obviously became a social norm, and it's just one great example of something that we do. Yeah,
no one questions it.
yeah, yeah,
No one
exactly.
questions it. What's happening there? People just doing it. And there's another other examples, like, when people say to you, oh, you need to have table manners, or like, who the fuck are coming up with these things? Like, what is these things people are coming up with? That's not like mannerism. Like, oh fuck, I want to, I want to eat, like, another example of is like, oh, well, you should eat this with a fork, or you should. Well, what if I want to eat it with my hands? Well, it's not
Mm.
polite. What the fuck do you mean it's not polite? you know well, that's just an example, right? Who came up with that rule? And this that's I'm just using those rules because I hear them a lot. My parents tell me to, like, oh, you have to eat like this. Why? And that's a little bit extreme. You don't have to do those, but those are just small example that no one ever questions. What happens there is
It's a great
humans,
mindset to have, though, right? Just that
yeah,
question,
just question
questioning
everything.
yourself and questioning everything else. Yeah,
Question everything. What are you doing? I mean, I dare you to go out in a day and see the things that you do, and ask yourself why do you do them, right? If you wake up in the morning, and you may have a habit. I mean, I tell you, and now people are gonna get very angry at me for saying this, but the way we are at the moment, it's very pseudo codey, as in we're like an algorithm, right? So
yeah,
our algorithm has boundaries, right? It's a very safe algorithm. So the way it works is, I wake up, should I do X, Y, Z? Yes, no. Yes. Does society says I should do it? Yes. Okay, I will do it. Should I do X, Y, Z? Does society say, should I do it? No. Or should I do it? No, because society says no. But there's no question happening as to why, because you at the moment there's no difference between you and the programmers, and the programming is coming from society, like as in your people around you. There was a examination done on few people, and they said people who took a political stance on, particularly said they stood by a certain party, was actually not because that's what they thought, but in fact because what their social programming was, right?
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
That makes sense, doesn't it? Absolutely. And so there's other things as well, like and we end up, yeah, so that's just an example. We just consume, we do what everyone else is doing. No one's questioning anything. And who are you voting for? Why are you voting for someone? Do you know much about it? I mean, I know Australia, right? Oh, well, I mean, Australia, it's really interesting because the democracy system, right? It's great. It's great. But at the same time, most people will vote for someone. But, an average Australian or average American or average anyone else doesn't really know who they're voting for or what they're voting
Yeah.
for. They just do what
Yeah.
they're
What
doing,
it
right?
stands for. Yep.
Yeah, they're just doing it. Or, they would sit around and talk shit every now and then, but, that's it. No one's really doing anything. And and once again, like the big one is another one. So this is an interesting one. So I've run into people who are great advocate for climate change, and props to them for that. And I've seen those exact people print 500 pages of fucking bullshit because that's how it's been done before, and that's how they've always done their job. It's so interesting because they're advocating for climate change. I would normally give them props for it, but I almost have a feeling that they're doing it because everyone else is doing it. Because on the other side, if they were questioning one of those things, they would go, well, I'm a great advocate for climate change, should I be printing 500 pages? Do you know what I mean? Do you get what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Exactly.
There is
Exactly.
no question happening. Like, that boggles my mind. Like, how is that possible? Like, are you that insane? Is that how mechanical you are? And I'm talking, like, I'm talking to myself here as well at times. I I've always been a little bit, personally, and Lachlan, I know you have been. We've been always sort of like a little bit different, sort of like, we've been a bit alternative. Yeah, so that's like we've been done things
Yeah.
differently, you know. But it's more so questioning things, right? It's why are you doing something? What's happening? You can't advocate for climate change and go to work and print 500 pages because, well, that's how it's always done. When there's another way to do it. I'm not talking. Let's say, if you someone out there, you don't believe in climate change, why would you still waste paper? Just this is an example. Should you question that? Well, you should, because when the printing methodology came around, there was a lot of paper, and that's what people did, right? And that's, they didn't have computers, so they did printing. We're in a different scenario now, so you should do something different. Maybe you should look into it. Maybe you should consider it. It's just it's just another example. And and then so many example that people do, and people sort of stand for different things because one group of their friends or what everyone else is doing, then that's what they've done, so feel comfortable with. And it just ends up being a cycle, and they never question anything.
Yeah. There's far less. And I guess that's the problem with identity politics, or that a lot of the, I don't want to use the word social justice, but a lot of things and a lot of reasoning that people do things like, I guess if you're doing something because someone else told you to do it, or you don't look too far into it and you sort of do it, like you're actually kind of blinded to the shortcomings and you're blinded to the hypocrisy of it because you're doing it for the wrong reason. And anyone who does anything for the right reason will do the things the right way because you're just constantly looking at it and, all right, why is this happening? What do I need to do that there? And that printing thing's a great example. Like if you actually really, you were doing it for the right reason, you would see, well, literally, this paper came from trees, and the trees are, we need more trees to be able to breathe and to live, and obviously to impede less on nature. But you can absolutely apply that into many different things in life. I think the big thing with like kind of the political sphere is how a lot of people feel it's not so much a male, but there's certainly like a kind of an agreement with the I get what guess what you would call the like left leaning political people. So the political left believe that there's a very select few people at the top that make a lot of decisions, and we're all kind of affected upon that. And there's a lot of there's a lot of power at play there, and people not sharing things around. But
I think this
oftentimes the people that go, the people that think that way, they're creating their own sort of very closed-minded way of thinking, that they're not being open in themselves because they're kind of going so far the other way, and they're just not thinking very much. Like they're just so biased, they're so wrapped up in kind of the principle of it, or what they believe. Not even they believe they're doing the right thing, because I don't actually think they are. They're doing it for the wrong reason. And once you kind of realize that, you figure out a lot of people are just bullshitting. Like they're just
they're
making things
just
up.
going with it. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm gonna quote Joe Rogan here. Actually, it's pretty relevant.
Mm,
We there's people out there, and we sometimes you can entertain the thought that there's people out there's someone out there who's controlling it out. There's controlling it all. There's people out there. There's some very powerful people out there controlling it all. And you know what? Yes, there is marketing and there's advertisement that is very well designed. And we talked about this in the episode 3, and about this and how the influence works. But at the same time, I think there's more chances that people are just dumb as fuck.
yeah, yeah, it
And
is. Unfortunately, it sounds very harsh, but I think
I'm
it
not,
is.
yeah, people is, I think majority is that versus someone out there who's controlling it all. There's more possibility that we're all just dumb as fuck. you know
Yep.
it,
People are just easily led.
easily like, maybe
Yeah.
we not, maybe dumb's not the right word to use, but we are very easily influenced. We're not questioning it. I have I have even some good friends. Even these few people have very close to me would always say to me is that, well, you get something like that. I'm actually going to use an example. I'm not going to quote a name, but it's a pretty interesting example. But I have friends who would say to me, well, someone is lucky because they have intelligence, right? Well, and that's who I am. That's just who I am. They've accepted who they are. And once again, Tony Robbins talks about it as well. He goes, when did you decide, at what day did you decide that's just who you are? you know so many people will say, well, that's just who I am, that's how I do things. Or intelligence is an interesting one, because people get told at a very early age where they fit in a slot, and they just sort of spend rest of their lives there. Intelligence is an interesting one, where I personally believe that intelligence is more to do with effort than actually genetically being gifted.
Yeah, most definitely.
Do you know what I mean? Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah,
So
yeah. It's discipline. No, it's more than discipline. It's an effort. Yeah, it's an effort to learn and to be constantly in a growth mindset.
that's
Yeah.
it. It's more effort. It's effort. A great example of is, like, for example, people say, "Who I can't cook," right? Well,
Yep.
fuck, was I born by? Were other people born knowing how to cook?
Yep.
How does that work? Like, why are you saying that to yourself? Why are you putting yourself in that mindset? It's like, well, that's just who I am. I can't cook because someone. That's the problem. No one's questioning it. Well, is it a possibility that I have never really learned how to cook?
Yep.
And
Yep.
people will blame, it's like, well, other people are smart and they just learn how to cook. No, motherfucker, they put effort in. This time, people always see. It's like, I
Trial and error.
trial
Yeah.
and error. I heard people. I saw the comments on Conor McGregor fights, like, oh, easy, $40 million or $60 million or $40 million in 40 seconds. I'm like, you stupid ass shit. What about the
Yeah.
training? What about the effort? What
Yeah.
about all the years of grind that it took to be there at that point? But all you saying is the 40 second that he made earned $40 million or $60 million. Fuck.
Yeah,
So
that's
that,
right, and that's kind of a whole nother idea, and that's why I watch fights at home now. Like I can't actually go out and watch. I can't actually go out and watch because there's a lot of stupidity that goes into the sport because people have a very closed-minded way of looking at it. It's like, oh, why would I pay for a fight that only goes for 40 seconds? And it's like I almost don't have the effort to go into it. But that way of thinking, like that very closed-minded way of thinking, like you could actually answer that for yourself in 10 seconds. Well, it's an athletic competition. There's two people throwing punches at each other. If someone goes down, if someone hits someone in the right spot, they're probably going to go down. If he's not getting paid $40 million because he asked for it. He's getting paid $40 million because he brings in $200 million worth of revenue. Like it's like fuck me. And
absolutely,
like,
absolutely.
sure, you don't have to know that exactly, but you have to just understand that like these sort of things don't just happen. Like, and it's not. I think that's just insecurity, and that's just people. Sport brings out like the best and the worst in people,
Oh,
and
absolutely.
yeah,
There's one of the
jealousy
greatest saying. One of the
part of it,
greatest.
sure.
Sorry. One of the
No,
greatest
no,
saying goes, people get paid not what their time, not for their time, but for what they're worth. It's
yep,
simple as that. Increase your worth. If you want to earn more money, increase your worth. Actually, I want to talk about something, and innovation comes into that as well. You can innovate how you get paid. There's a really cool example that I saw today, and it said, a a bar of iron cost about $5. Like, I think it was a kilo of iron, or it was like 100 grams of iron. Whatever, I forgot what it
yep,
was.
yep,
If you make a horseshoe out of it, you can sell it for $20. If you
yep.
make what else was it, if you can make
Coins, maybe.
coins out of, no, I don't think it was coins.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's right. If you could make those watch dials, what are they called, little watch gears,
yeah, yep, yep, yep.
you can sell those up to, I don't know, hundreds of thousands, because if you put it in watches, like those watches go out for crazy prices, right? This is an example. you know some of these watches, you look at some watch companies, and some of these watches are like $100,000 watches, right? And which is
Yeah,
really interesting example, because the mechanics are the same, aren't they? But they're just selling it different,
yeah,
what they're worth. Which is interesting as to how you innovate, because that's what it is, innovation.
yeah,
And which is really, so that's the whole idea of what I wanted to talk about today. And it's you know that's me. But I really think that we, as a society, there's something wrong here, I feel. What are your thoughts,
yeah.
Lachlan? Your
No, that's
closing thoughts?
yeah, okay, okay. No, and it's not. Yeah, it's not just you. Like it's because you've made a real conscious effort of deciding that's the way you want to look at life and the way you want to work towards life, and then you just are in a state of constant improvement. And like what we spoke about, I think probably every episode, like self auditing, like being honest with yourself and being honest with everything else. And once you kind of get that clarity of your own actions and your own thoughts, you kind of drift. You can use that in every part of life, and it's just a basic principle of being diligent with it. Like you just have to just be thinking about it. Like don't take it seriously because it is serious, but it doesn't have to be stressful. And I think it's just important to still have empathy. Like we still need to understand that everyone has their own circumstances and reasons for doing things, but ultimately, if you're constantly working on a way to get better and or constantly working on a way to improve, then you're going to find yourself innovating in your own life. Like you're gonna be the Jeff Bezos of your own world, and like yeah, you're probably not gonna create the next Amazon, but you're gonna continually improve and get better.
Well,
And
that's the right thing, Lachlan. So just quickly on that one, maybe you could create the next Amazon. you know
yeah,
that's it. That's the whole idea of it. Maybe you will create the next Amazon, but who is telling you that you can't?
yeah, exactly. And if just don't live in that mindset of you can't. Live in the mindset of like you can. We live in a time and age where there's so much chance and choice and opportunity to do so many great things, and definitely, like I found myself like really always frustrated with the way things were and being told things for really poor reasoning. And I guess that's why. my counter to that was to be over analytical and to kind of come at it from a different angle. But what it did is it just made same sort of thing. People are, oh geez, you're really you're really smart, or you look at things openly, or that's a good way of looking at it. It's like it took time, man. Like I was the same. I couldn't cook for shit, and I used to say, oh, I'm just not good at cooking. No, I just never tried. I just never gave it a go. And then once you give it a go, we all have our own strengths, and then all of a sudden, like, fuck, I love cooking now, and it's a beautiful thing. But if I didn't try, and I just stayed and was like stuck in my old ways of saying, oh, I just can't cook, well then guess what, I'd still be eating fucking fries, and I'd still be bloody 20 kilos overweight. So we could do it in our own
Oh,
lives. We could do
absolutely.
it.
Everyone has the power and the opportunity. We live in a world where resources are there's incredible resources, right? The internet is available to everyone. Everyone can learn everything, and it's brilliant that you can do a lot. You can do anything you want to. Don't let those self-limiting beliefs stick around, question everything. And I just want to bring something up here. There's two actually scenarios that personally happened to me. I remember, so one of my actually relatives said to me this to me. He said, "What are you chasing?" I'm like, "Well, what I'm chasing is, I want to, change the world. I want to see the difference in what I want to make people better. I want to do all these things right. And in the process, I would like to be a billionaire as well." So that was my answer. Very very cheeky answer, but they thought it was a cheeky answer. By all means, I believed it 100%. There's not a part of me who doesn't believe it. I believe it 100%.
Yeah,
You know what was the response? They laughed and they said to me, "He goes, are you crazy? There's like one in millions of people who end up doing something like that." And
yeah,
I simply propose this: is there anyone who said that 1% out of the million is not going to be me?
yeah.
Simple as that.
No, that's right. That's right.
Simple as
That's
that.
right. And the attitude that you have towards it, and the attitude that they have towards it, I'm sure if we really went deep, we could find that bleed into all areas of life.
It's always like, yeah, 100%.
Yeah, yes, 100%. Like that pessimistic, negative.
Yeah,
You
and
can't do things instead of like, wow, that's unbelievable. Like, man, that's awesome that you think that way. Like, go for it.
for sure. Thank you. Appreciate that. There's another
No,
example I want to use here. There's another example I use here. And now, like what we're talking about, just about cooking, which is a great example. So I once had a friend. I'm not going to say names, but let's say they were the same ethnicity as me, right? And think about Pakistani people. They are a little bit entitled in weird ways. They're lovely people. They're probably they're very smart people. They're probably one of the sweetest people on the planet. They're kind, but sometimes they can be entitled, especially to their own people, quote unquote, right?
yep,
And I remember, so someone once said to me, and he said, no, they didn't say this, they didn't say it to me, but I heard it from a source. And people gossip, so you hear things very quickly. So this guy said to me, he said, "Well, Anik ends up working in all these jobs, but he never helps me out. But he never helps me out. I've got the same qualifications as him. In fact, I've got more qualifications than I could probably do all the jobs that he's doing. So there's nothing special. He should get me a job there. I could do the job better than him." And all I thought when they said that to me, I said, if you could do the job better than me, you wouldn't need me to help you out to get you that job, right? Or hook
yeah,
you up. If you could possibly do the job better than me, if you could do what I could do, you know, which the sad thing is, they probably
motherfucker, you'd be doing
you would be doing it.
it.
The sad thing is they probably could, but they're doing the same thing because they're not looking at effort. They're just seeing how well he's doing it, so it must be easy. No, it's all about effort. It's just a thing. So they put self-limiting beliefs, which is something like what you said. I can't cook. Well, fuck. Well, other people can cook. I can't cook. It's not that simple. Like that's not how it works. There's people out there. One of the great example is because I did a little bit of I studied acting as well a little bit, and one of the great interesting things that happen. So many people believe, and they have very strong beliefs about that they can't sing, right? And it's really interesting. In acting school, they did this. We had this singing class, and they broke it down. It was amazing. The people who couldn't sing sang the best.
Wow. Yeah.
It was incredible because there was a methodology to it, and the people who
Yeah,
couldn't sing, what they did, they put effort into learning because they thought it was cool. So people who
yeah, yeah,
could sing,
yeah.
they're like, "Well, fuck it, I can sing already."
Mm.
Fascinating,
And they
isn't it?
did
So
improve. Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
It's a very funny insight into how psychology of the mind will work. Like you think that you're, and that's one thing that Gary Vaynerchuk talks about is like your strengths, like doubling down on your strengths. Like you don't just rest on them. You don't just say, "Oh, I've got this bit covered. Like I've got to go." Like that thing will go. Like in the idea that the people that couldn't sing had, and they improved out of sight because they listened and they learnt and they weren't closed-minded and pig-headed about it. And I'm guessing, were you in that class, or was that something that you were just that was just you were
no, I
there
was in the
working
class. I was in
time?
the class.
Yeah, so I'd imagine you were one of the guys that got in there and actually was able to pump
Yeah,
something out.
yeah. It was good
Yeah,
fun.
fuck yeah.
It was good fun. It was like, yeah, it was like, you saying something funny. You know, it was,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, it was fun. But that's just an interesting concept. What ends up happening, right? But yeah, so I'm just gonna do some quick closing remarks. This has been a interesting one, and I think it nonetheless is a very important one. As all of our podcasts have been so far, I think I still love our last podcast the most. So if you haven't heard that one, so please check it out. Episode 6, it's gonna be up soon. Well, it'll be up before this one, so it doesn't make sense.
yeah. That's right. Episode 5. Yeah, this is episode 6, is it?
Episode
Yeah,
six,
this is
isn't it? It's
episode
crazy.
6.
Um,
Yeah,
but yeah, so question everything. See, why are things done certain way? Is there a reason why they're being done that way? Is there a better way that can be done? Don't put self-limiting beliefs on yourself. And if you're an advocate for something, and question yourself, are you an advocate for something because everyone else is an advocate for it, or do you really truly believe in the cause? If you believe in the cause, by all means stick by it 100%, go all in. But then don't be doing other shit, like if you're an advocate for climate change, don't be printing 500 pages. you know don't lie to
yeah.
yourself.
Stay true to it. Stay
Stay
true to
true to
yourself.
yourself. And
Yeah,
I
find
believe,
something that you're going to stay true to as well.
yeah,
Yeah,
and I
but
truly
doing it for the
believe that
right reasons.
everyone is capable of being their own great self, even though
Yeah,
just previously I said everyone is dumb as fuck. But
yeah, yeah. Well, everyone has the potential. Most people will, it. Yeah, that's the attitude to have, is that people can change. Like, even though most people statistically won't,
that's it.
like the attitude to have is that people will. So, no, that was perfectly summarized.
That's it. Look, I'll let you close up. This has been a good one once again. I'm loving this podcast, but I'll let you wrap up, bro.
Yeah. Nah, so much fun, man. And of course, if you're not already, follow us on Instagram. Check us out, Spotify, Apple Podcast, however you're listening through here. Give us a review on that platform. That'd be really great. Feedback would be awesome too, just to let us know what you guys like, what you guys thought too. Get involved with a chat too. Like, send us a message what you thought. Like, if you thought you were way off, maybe you think that way, or someone who thinks that way, and you kind of wondering why. Like, sometimes a different perspective, can give you the answers. So yeah, definitely do that. And as always, we appreciate you guys listening. Thank you, my brother. This is another fucking awesome and very insightful podcast. I found myself just listening to you talk, and I couldn't come up with something to say, not because I wasn't listening, but because you were just like, you kind of just went in a space that I wouldn't say I didn't know what was going on, but I was just like, man, like you're just dropping bombs. Like, you just kept dropping bombs on me, and I'm trying to think of what to say, and I'm like, you dropped another bomb, and I'm like, oh my gosh. But no, this is lovely. So yeah, thank you, brother. You're all good. Nothing more to
Yeah, I'm
say.
all good. I'm good. All I was gonna say, thank you so much for listening, because it helps me getting those thoughts out of my head when I can just quickly go, what do you think, Lachlan? Just so it's like a self confirmation. Yeah, I think I know what I'm talking about. I think I know what I'm talking about. No, but it's great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you too, brother. Love you very much, mate. So we have been the Clever Dummies once and again, episode number 6. You guys have a great day. Enjoy the week, big week for sure. God love you all, and as always, give your mum a kiss for me. Mwah.
Bye.